Okay, so hello if you're with us. We're just getting ready. Polly's just checking the sound. How's that going, Polly?
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
You can hear me? Fabulous. Okay. So welcome, coming in and make yourself comfortable wherever you are. If you're sitting, standing, lying down, whatever you're doing, just relax, make yourself comfortable. We're going to get started in a few moments. We're just getting set up technically behind the scenes and waiting for people to arrive. Actually, if you're here, do say who you are, say hello in the chat, say who you are, also where you're talking from, because it's great having lots of people coming onto this live stream who are familiar with the Buddhist Centre, familiar with this room, and it's also wonderful to invite many of you who've never been here before in as well. So say your name and where you're watching from today. So and then when we're ready, Ariane, who's behind the camera, hi, say hello to Ariane, will tell us when we're ready to go. Yeah.
We already have a bunch of hellos from Anne, Shirley, Jules and Nicole, Shay, Harvey and Lewisham.
Lovely. Okay, so Anne, Shay, Nicole, and who else is it?
Harvey.
Harvey. Hi there. Really good to hear you, see you. Lewisham. Hello to Lewisham.
Lewisham, Kentish Town and Brighton as well.
Hi, Brighton, Kentish Town.
Hoxton, West Kensington. We have Raoul, Aaron, Brian, Joe, Shreve.
Fantastic. Welcome you all. London is well represented today in all different parts. Fantastic.
Mia from Walthamstow.
Oh, hi. It's not far from where I live. Mia, hi.
And Marie-Louise from Paris.
Oh, hello, Marie-Louise. So Paris is, as they say, in the house. That's good.
Epsom Downs.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt and Casper, the dog.
Oh, Matt, but Casper's the dog. Hi, Casper. And Matt, the owner. Hello to you.
And Kate from Essex.
Okay, hi, Kate.
Adam from Purley.
Mm-hmm.
We already have 37 people watching.
Okay, all right. So we're gradually accumulating as we're getting ready to start. So we're not quite at 7 o'clock. So we'll just say hello to each other as well, if you're in the chat too, of course. You know, if you're familiar with the format, I'll talk for a while, and then we'll do meditation. And then we'll have a space for questions. So if you've got any questions already that have been bubbling up, you can be putting them in the chat. We'll come to them later on. And I'm just waiting for Ariane to do the countdown, and we'll get going. Yeah.
A couple more hellos from Greenwich, Ricky.
Hi, Ricky.
Barnett, Adriana.
Mm-hmm. Hi.
Julie from Paglisham.
From where? Oh, from Essex. Okay, mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Ian Roberts from the Peak District.
Okay, lovely, good, lovely.
It's 7 p.m. now.
Okay. Oh, great. All right. So let's start since it's 7 o'clock. Thank you for those who've already joined. If you're watching this later as well, still hello to you. My name is Suryagupta. And I'm one of the teachers here at the London Buddhist Centre. And this is our first week of everyday teaching at 7 p.m. And the idea is really that you just tune in at 7 and have a pause in your day to unwind, to reflect on some teachings and to meditate with myself and others. So welcome those of you who've joined us. Lovely to see you. So actually today, I did a session earlier on called Ask a Buddhist, and where people write in with a question, or with various questions. And I had a couple of questions today that it really inspired me to think a bit more deeply about, and I actually wanted to share my reflections with you all on these questions that came in. So one of the questions was, and it's a big one, so it was, can Buddhism and meditation help us come to terms with our own death, imminent or otherwise? So it's a very profound question, and I think it's very pertinent to what's happening right now in the world. Death, like birth, is always happening from the beginning of time. It's always happening. There's nothing new about it. But the fact is, we often celebrate birth, or we think birth is a good thing on the whole, and then we're fearful or concerned about death. So this is one of the things I'm going to be sharing a bit about tonight. Yeah, just helping us think about how we can relate to that. But first, I'd like us just to arrive a little bit in the moment. Okay, so I'd like us to take a couple of deep breaths and see if you can just be aware of yourself seated on the ground or your chair. If you're standing, just take a moment to feel your feet beneath you and feel supported. Take a couple of more breaths, deeper breaths. When we're ready, you can open your eyes. There we are. Okay, so welcome again if you've just joined. I've got a wonderful team behind me. They all live together. Ariane, Polly and Tara. Yeah, it's good. And I'm 2 meters away from them. So we've not come into close contact with each other. And I was saying that I was asked a very profound question earlier, which is, can meditation and Buddhism help us deal with death, imminent or otherwise? And I think one of these reasons this question's coming up for people is because, I don't know where you are, but certainly in London, we're definitely, like, we have a daily tally of how many people have died from the COVID-19, for example. Health is very much on everybody's mind, and it's causing a lot of anxiety and fear. And we've been talking about that in the course of some of these sessions, how to deal with anxiety and fear. But death isn't new. It's always been with us. And what's interesting is how we relate to it a bit in our culture. So when it happens, it can feel like a very personal, well, it is personal, but we can feel very alone with it, because it can feel like it's only happening to us. And that's partly because we don't really talk about it very much. And we don't really have language and even rituals to kind of deal with it very effectively in our culture. Not just the fact of death, but our feelings around it. So Buddhism really helps us think about death in quite a radically different way. And I'm going to share a bit about that. So yes, the good news is that meditation and Buddhism can help us deal with our death. And it does that through the various practices and teachings that introduces us to. So I'm going to share a core teaching of Buddhism is all things are impermanent. All things are impermanent. This is what the Buddha said 2,500 years ago. He said that all conditioned things are impermanent, which means that anything that comes into being that's conditioned by other things will die. That also means, and we can hear that in a sort of threatening kind of way, but actually it just means that everything changes. Everything changes, everything is in process. We are in process. I'm in process as I'm speaking to you now. The weather's in process as it's happening. The events in the world are in process. Everything is changing. Everything is in flux. And we do know that intellectually. We all do know that. I mean, they teach that in school, you know, when they teach a child how to plant a seed and watch it grow. That's about the way that growth happens. It happens through a process of change. So we do all know that intellectually, but actually, emotionally, we really struggle with that, because emotionally we want things that we like to stay the same. We want to fix certain things in our life. So if we're really happy in our situation, we love our job, we love, our partner, we want it all to stay the same. Even though if we thought about it, we wouldn't really want it all to stay the same in actual fact, but in our heads, that's what we want. So when things change, particularly unwelcome change, particularly change we didn't expect or predict, it really throws everything up in the air for us and we can feel deeply insecure. So for me, this question of what can help me deal with change, what can help me deal with unwanted change, what can help me deal with my own death, which definitely was an unwanted, is still in a way an unwanted change, what can help me deal with that is what got me into practicing Buddhism. I found myself as a young woman on a plane on an 18-hour flight years and years ago, and we suddenly ran into difficulty on this flight, and the plane was dropping lots of feet, and people were getting very scared, including the air stewards, which is going to definitely make you nervous if the people supporting you are also looking scared. So everyone was in this situation where we felt we were worried about that our deaths were imminent. It could happen any moment. We suddenly were faced with that reality. And I didn't know what to do. What I saw around me was that people were either calling out for help, but everyone was in their own fear, or there were lots of Catholics on board because we were coming back from the Philippines, and people were taking out rosaries and praying. And I didn't feel that was open to me. I no longer, I didn't know what I would be praying to I'd be praying to. So I was stuck there, like everybody else actually, dealing with my own fear. And what I remember was that it was very in my body. I remember looking at my armrest, my hand on the armrest, and they were clenched. And I remember feeling this tightness in my stomach. And I couldn't even think. All I knew is that I wasn't ready to die. And it was interesting for me. I had this very strong sense that I'm not ready to die. And then the question came, well, why? Why am I not ready? And there were two things. One, I didn't want to suffer pain. I didn't want to have any physical pain. And secondly, I didn't feel I was ready to die because I didn't feel like I'd lived. That was the key thing for me. I hadn't felt like I'd really lived, or even that and that wasn't to do with just my age. It was the fact that I wanted to really understand what life was really about. I felt if I really understood what life was really about, I would know how to live in a way that was really positive, really beneficial to myself and other people. And fundamentally, that I'd learned to die. When that moment of death came, I would be able to die without regret because I'd lived life well and purposefully and with benefit to others somehow, and to myself, of course. So I was in this fear, I had these questions, didn't know the answers, and at that point I looked out of the window of the plane and I saw this very incredibly beautiful sky. It was a very, almost, I call it now sort of an unearthly kind of beauty. There were lots of colours, there was a huge star, and I was transfixed at this sky for what felt like a long, long time. I don't actually know how long I was looking at the sky, but all I knew was that I felt like I was in another world. And then I came back to the plane and everything was the same. People were still praying, looking scared. The plane was still dropping feet. So the situation was exactly the same. But my response, I noticed that my hand looked relaxed and the knot in my stomach seemed to have gone and I felt relaxed. So that later on, when I started meditating, I began to understand that experience more. But at the time, I was just really grateful because now I could think and I could be with what was happening now. So I wasn't worrying about the past. I wasn't worrying about the future. I was with the experience I was in. I was breathing. I was with my breath. I was with my body. I actually felt care for other people. Before that, I was completely focused on myself, and suddenly I was caring for the other passengers as well. And I vowed then that I would learn how to live without regret, and I'd learn how to deal with my own, the reality that one day, unknown to me when that would be, I would die. So that's how I became a Buddhist, at least how I went on my search for the teachings. I didn't actually plan to become a Buddhist. I just wanted something that would help me deal with that kind of thing on a day-to-day basis. So how does it do that? So for me, meditation was very, in a way, that's what we do at the centre. We introduce people firstly to meditation. Because in meditation, you're, in a practical way, you're getting into contact with some of these core teachings. So in a very practical way, you're learning that the breath, for example, because we're teaching mindfulness of breathing practice here, you'll learn that the breath is constantly changing. You'll have an idea of the breath, and you'll have an idea of how you want your breath to be, but actually, when you really connect with the practice, you'll realise every breath is unique. And you become really interested, after time, with following that breath and becoming fascinated, and that begins to calm and still the mind. The body too. We have an idea of our body. We think our body is like this. We want our bodies to be a certain way. Again, with meditation, you're becoming aware of how fascinating the body is, and it's not what you think it is. So you begin to let go of your idea of your breath, you let go of your idea of your body, and you come into a relationship with what actually is happening in your bodily experience now. So people often say when they start meditating, I didn't realise I had a pain in my shoulder. Or I didn't realise that I sort of hold on to an aspect of your body and it's tight or tense. People don't realise actually there can be a lot of joy experienced in the body as well, and a lot of delight. So there's all these things that we can discover about the body. We let go of our ideas of what we think it is, and we come into a relationship with what it actually is happening now. And obviously emotionally as well. So, our emotions are constantly fluctuating. We come into a relationship with that. And through all those practices, we learn that everything is genuinely in flux. Our emotional states, our mental states, our physical experience. What we're trying to do is bring awareness in. We're trying to bring awareness into our experience. So that we see things that are happening from moment to moment. We respond to that, and that brings clarity, and through that we begin to see not just our experience, but we begin to see the experience out there in the world. We begin to see that everything in the world is fluctuating and is changing, and we pay more attention to that, not our idea of how it should be, but really how it is. But Buddhism goes a lot further than that, because it also says that if we do that, if we bring in the teachings of impermanence into our experience and see that everything is changing, we begin to appreciate our experience a lot more. We begin to take less for granted, and we begin to see the world, see other people and ourselves, knowing that we're not going to be here forever, with more kindly eyes. With a bit more sensitivity, with a bit more care as to what happens to them and what happens to us. And then we can appreciate and we look for the things that will help us grow, that help us develop, the things that will contribute to life being more meaningful, more joyful, more purposeful for other people and ourselves. So, meditation is a gateway. Meditation is a gateway for us to bring awareness into our experience, an awareness that helps us see the moment-to-moment experience much more, to see change happening in our experience. And then the teachings help us understand that actually we're in the same boat as everybody else. The fact that we're here for finite time, everybody else is too. Everyone wants to be happy. No one wants to suffer. How can we all recognise that, appreciate the fact that life is short, and then benefit ourselves and others? And that's one of the things the teaching helps us do. One of the other questions I got today was, well, how do you become a Buddhist then? How do you? Somebody's really think it was Camilla, if you're listening, watching this, you were saying that it's really overwhelming. There's so much online around Buddhism and meditation. Where do you start and how do you become a Buddhist? And my short answer to that is really start from where you are. So you're watching these sessions. If you appreciate them and they're benefiting you, great, continue to watch them. Interact with us online. We're going to discover ways to do more and interact with you more as we go forward. But really, you don't need to know a lot about the teachings for them to have an effect. That's what I really love about Buddhism. You can take one teaching such as all things change and all things are impermanent and reflect on that, see it in your everyday life, and it can begin to have an effect. And we need to do that in a context where other people are practicing as well. Because what I found when I came along all those years ago, I had this big question: can meditation and Buddhism really help me deal with my own death? It was a very big question, and my own fear around it, and my own anxiety around it. And I didn't actually know how I was going to put it into practice. I didn't know what I would be like as a Buddhist or as somebody even deeply in meditation. I needed to see other people who'd been practicing for longer than me, and I could see that they were kinder than I was, friendlier for sure than I was. They were a bit clearer too, and they had a confidence about them, about meditation. They had a sense of it worked, and they were very committed to that. And for me, that's what really helped me sort of not just reflect on the teachings for myself, to know that the teachings would help transform my experience, and trust actually that if I just keep paying attention in meditation, kept applying myself, kept reflecting on the teachings, that change would happen. I saw it in them, and I would trust that it would happen in me. I was no different essentially to them. And so finding a context that you can practice is really very helpful. But taking one teaching and reflecting on it, in a way pursuing it, checking it out with other people, in a way that's you becoming a Buddhist. There are rituals and there's things you can do to confirm that in a way, or to commit yourself to that, but really fundamentally it's reflecting on and practicing and making those teachings your own. They're ancient teachings and they need to be lived now. Okay, so that's some reflections. We're going to sit for a short while now, and we're going to do a metta bhavana practice. One of the things about when you deal with these more wisdom teachings, such as how to come to terms with our own death, the teachings of impermanence, all things are impermanence, it's a wisdom teaching. If you really take it in, it has a strong effect. And what we need is to have a really positive base. We have to have a very strong sort of emotionality, if you like, to be able to go deeper and deeper with those teachings. So we're going to do a short practice called the metta bhavana. We'll do it in 3 stages. It's bringing kindness and awareness to ourselves, a friendly attitude to ourselves, a friendly attitude to our friend, and then we're going to expand it to the world, okay? So let's get ourselves set up. And as we're doing that, if a question comes, do make a note in the chat. Okay. So getting yourself settled. We're going to turn the lights down a little bit. Before we actually get into practice, just check out how you're feeling at this moment in time. Is it broadly pleasant? Unpleasant? Or somewhere in between? Just take note. And we're going to start off with a very short body scan, body awareness. It's always good, always helpful to ground oneself in one's physical experience. So becoming aware of our feet and legs, the lower half of our body, our thighs, our pelvis, hips, groin. Really allow yourself to relax into the ground. Feel the weight, your weight, being supported by the earth. And then the upper half of our body, from the base of our spine, our back, the expanse of back and up to our shoulders. And take a deeper breath if that helps. You can imagine if there's any tension in the shoulders. You can imagine that flowing down the arms and out through your hands, your fingers. A flow of energy that's gradually loosening. And releasing. Becoming aware of your head, forehead, imagine any tensions being soothed away. Eyes softening, jaw loosening. And then connecting with your breath. Your breath as it moves your chest, your abdomen. Every moment different. Really appreciating the fact that right now you're making the most of your experience by sitting, breathing, wanting to grow. So no matter how your day's been or your week, right now you can really appreciate the fact that you're making the effort to grow, to become aware. To become kinder to yourself, more open to your experience. So just bringing yourself to mind. And wishing yourself well. So you can say to yourself, just every now and again, just may I be well, may I be free from suffering, may I be happy. And you can, as you go through this first stage, just find a sense of relaxation in the body. So if you notice tension or tightness, becoming aware of it and letting it go. That too is metta, is loving kindness. Releasing tension in the body. And wishing yourself well. If your mind wanders, just come back to your physical experience, your body. Cultivating a friendly attitude to oneself. One of care and kindness. And wishing yourself well. Appreciating the efforts that you've made today, this week, or right now to grow. So in this next stage, bring a friend to mind. Maybe it's someone you've not been able to see for a while, but someone that you have a fairly straightforward connection with. Someone you like. And as you bring them to mind, you want to wish them well. You want the best for them. So again, you can imagine them happy, positive, appreciating life, their life. You can imagine them too free from suffering and its causes. You can wish that they're free from suffering and its causes. You can appreciate your friend as they are. And appreciate their efforts to grow. However that's expressed. And in this stage, bring ourselves back to mind, our friend, and then we take that out to the world. That might be people that you live with. It might be people that you see around on your street, neighbours, colleagues. It might be those people you're aware of that through their efforts are benefiting you. In some way. people that are delivering our post, taking rubbish away, health workers, so many people right now and always are benefiting us in different ways. We don't need to know their names or much about them. We can wish them well. That they too find happiness and its causes, and are free of suffering and its causes. That they grow and make progress. In your mind, you can travel to different parts of the world, to people in all kinds of different situations, extending your friendliness, your awareness, your kindly awareness to all beings. May we all grow and make progress. All beings everywhere. May we appreciate each other and look upon each other with kindly awareness. May we all cultivate confidence and learn to be with change. In its various forms. And as we bring this practice to a close, just come back to your body again. Notice how you are. Appreciate your efforts. However they've been, just appreciate the fact that you've given yourself the time today, this evening, to cultivate awareness and to connect with your experience in this moment. And that you've wished others well. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Okay, all right. Okay, so you've got a chance now. You've got a few moments when you can ask some questions. We'll put the lights back up. Yes, do feel free to write in any questions in the chat. I think we've got some coming in. So yeah, off you go, Ariane. Thanks.
We have a question from Chris. He says, How do you conquer the fear of impermanence regarding losing the more pleasant things in life? For example, the loss of friends and family.
So yes, I mean, right now we're probably all going through an experience where we can't see the people we want to see. So there's big losses when, you know, death happens, illness happens, and then there's a little losses like we can't see people we want to see, for example. So fear's an interesting thing. Again, in meditation, what we're trying to do is get familiar with our emotions. We get familiar with our negative emotions, such as fear. What often happens with fear is that we're frightened by fear itself. We don't know how to deal with it. There's a bit of us that wants to push it away and not want to confront it. Actually, the more familiar you are with what happens with fear in the body, so you know, for example, fear has this interesting thing where it just doesn't want you to be with it. If you can learn to actually just go, what is fear? How does it manifest in the body? Where does it sit in the body? Does it move around? Does it have a shape? If you just become curious about it, what can happen is you begin to lose the fear of the fear. You become more familiar with it and the way it shows up in your experience. You'll become familiar with the kind of thoughts it makes you have. You'll become familiar with the kind of tension it creates in the body. And you begin to relax the tension in the body. That's why we keep saying, when you're meditating, come back to the body, notice the tensions, notice the tightness, and relax those. You become more familiar with it. And then you can look at fear and say, and actually have some empathy for yourself in it. It's a bit like, you know, those dreams you have where you're always running from the monster, running from the thing that's chasing you. At some point you turn around and go, let me have a good look at you. What do you actually look like? And then you realise, actually you get into a dialogue with the thing that's chasing you. You actually become familiar with them. You can even become friendly with them. And then they're no longer something to run away from. So we want to get familiar with our emotions, how it manifests, so that we can lose the fear of them.
To follow on from that, another question about kind of powerful emotions. Beth asks, how do you work with crying during meditation? I became upset bringing my friend to mind and realizing how long it'll be until I see her again.
Yeah, I think that's loss and grief. Loss and grief is one of the things that's happening at the moment, I think, for collectively. I don't know if we're talking about it as much as we could be, but certainly I found myself even walking, you know, going for a walk or run in the park, suddenly thinking, gosh, when am I going to see so-and-so again? And I feel it, and I feel a kind of sadness there. So again, in meditation, if you notice there's sadness arising, that's absolutely okay. It's allowing it to be there. And one of the things, a key thing in meditation is we're not trying to repress our emotional states. We're not indulging them either. So we're not kind of going, I won't see them again. And, you know, you're not sort of like going over stories. But what you're trying to do is just allow the emotions to be there. And then bring again kindness and empathy to that. It's okay that you're feeling sad and not seeing your friend. And if you bring the teaching to mind, that sadness will pass. And allow it to be there and allow it to pass. And knowing that the likelihood is you will see your friend, and when you see them, it's going to be absolutely fantastic because you'll really appreciate them even more, perhaps, too.
Ricky asks about another state that is coming up at this time, restlessness. He says, do you know any meditation techniques to assist with restlessness? With current situation, I'm starting to feel high levels of it.
So all the meditation practices, and mindfulness of breathing is a very good one because it's very simple. The one that we did tonight sort of involves, you know, sort of the sort of more mental, emotional faculties. But the mindfulness of breathing is a very simple practice. On our website, on the YouTube channel, there's some guidance around that, so you'll be able to find some instruction in there. But in that practice, again, the starting point is just noticing and recognizing that you're feeling restless. And again, just say, what's it doing in your body? Again, where is it affecting your body? What kind of thoughts does restlessness produce in your mind? When I'm restless, I want to just jump up from the meditation. I'm thinking, I've got something to do suddenly. I remember I've got to do something, and suddenly my mind wants to go somewhere else. What we want to do is go, that's restlessness, yeah? And then what we're doing is coming back to our experience, coming back to the body, coming back to the breath. And then restlessness will come again, restlessness, and come back to the body and the breath. The more you do that, what you'll discover is that your restlessness begins to calm down the more you bring yourself back to your body and your breath. And then it will, some point, evaporate, and you'll find yourself calm. Even if there's just a few moments of calm, it's absolutely worth it, because what you're doing is training your mind to not just follow restlessness, and to realize that you can bring yourself back to your actual current experience in the body.
We have two questions about the Metta Bhavana, and I think they go quite well together, actually. One is wishing all beings well, including the ones that may have hurt us recently, the best way to work through the loss and disappointment. And the other is the Metta Bhavana practice the best way to develop wisdom? How and why?
Oh gosh, fantastic questions. So does the Metta Bhavana help us with those people that let us down and upset us or hurt us? Absolutely yes. If there's somebody who's really done you a lot of serious harm, I would say avoid putting them in your practice at the beginning, when you're beginning to practice to begin with. Because it can produce a lot of strong emotion, and that can overwhelm us. So what we invite you to do in the practice, one of the stages is where we bring somebody into the practice, is where we have some difficulty with them. It's not huge, but it's enough for us to, get into a little bit. They might irritate us a bit, or we just find them frustrating. What we're learning to do there is, again, notice our response. We're noticing what happens when I bring this person to mind. We'll have a habitual response, the way we deal with them, the way we relate to them. We'll suddenly find tension, or we'll suddenly want to react, or we'll suddenly have a story going, which means that we at that point in time, we're not able to really give them much metta. That's okay. That's part of the practice. What we're trying to do is recognize our habitual response, and then bringing to mind the fact that even though we might not really get on with them, we might not even like them very much, they too suffer in the way that we do. They too want to be happy. They too want to grow and make progress. So whilst we're recognizing our own response, we can bring some kindness to our own response, particularly if they've hurt us in some way. But then we want to, when we're ready, to connect to the fact that we're still human. We still share a very commonality with them, which is that we want to be happy and well, as they do. And we can then extend care to them in that way. Yeah. What was the other one about the metta?
Is this the best way? How and why is this the best way to develop wisdom?
Yes, because what I just said about that common humanity, in a way, one of the things everybody's talking about right now is that, oh gosh, we're all in the same boat, yeah? Celebrities and politicians and everyone's in the same boat. We don't normally relate to each other in that way. We normally think, well, I'm here, you're there, we're very different to each other. And we're now seeing that we share this common experience. And there is a sense that we want to do our best as well. That is wisdom, actually. That's wisdom. But we arrive at that through reflection, we arrive at that through meditation, we arrive at that just in what I just described, by even if you don't have the same opinion as somebody, or somebody's hurt you in some way, you can still wish them well. You can still see their common humanity. That is the beginnings of wisdom.
And beyond humans, there's animals. So someone's saying that given that the situation might have started from animals, how can Buddhist philosophy guide the way we interact with animals in nature?
Yes, so in Buddhism, it's all living beings. We extend our care and concern to all living beings, which is why many Buddhists, not all Buddhists, but many Buddhists are vegetarian, for example. We want to reduce the harm that we enact on each other. It does sound like the conditions that many animals are kept in that particular context were very difficult and produce pain, produce suffering. We want to avoid that, but in order for that to happen, we all have to become more and more sensitive to what is another's experience, which means we need to imaginatively identify with other beings. So other beings are not there for just our pleasure or consumption or function. How can we extend our care to other beings and our imaginative connection with other beings? That's the way that we'll collectively begin to kind of think, actually, how do we keep animals? How do we look after other beings? How do we become friendly to other species? The more we can do that for ourselves, care for others in our context, and then it gradually extend that more and more to the whole world is what Buddhist practice is about. Okay. So, thank you very much for your questions. They're very interesting questions. I think the Metta Bhavana it's a very beautiful practice, but it can be a challenging practice as well because it is kind of introducing us to how we relate to ourselves and other people. And while we're talking about extending care to others, whilst we're talking about caring for the whole world, wishing all beings well, we are our starting point. We really can't do that effectively, consistently, if we don't learn how to relate to ourselves in a really positive, constructive way. And that's why the practice starts with wishing yourself well. So it's the end of the week, so I invite you to appreciate one or two things that you've done this week. You might write that in the chat as well. One or two things that you've done this week that you can see that actually you really did make a positive effort for. You were kind to yourself or another, or you were able to change the way you related to something that was more beneficial to yourself. So really do at the end of a week, particularly when many of us days are blurring in from one to the other, but let's say on a Friday evening, we're going to just take a moment to just appreciate the efforts that we make in terms of growing, in terms of being kinder to ourselves, in terms of being more aware of what's going on in our experience. And you can share any moments that you've had in the chat. Anything that you've done that you've regretted as well, or that you've learned from, again, notice that, because that's, rather than feeling bad about that, it's noticing that that's also how we become more aware, is by acknowledging things that didn't go well, but that we've learned something from, and then making a commitment to try a different way another time as well. Okay, so that's sort of Friday offering from me. Appreciate your efforts, acknowledge the learning you've done from the things that didn't go well, and commit to making a different choice next time. But also getting support as well. Buddhist practice doesn't happen in isolation. We grow in community. So picking up the phone, getting on FaceTime with somebody, and just sharing actually something that you've done that you're pleased with and you've appreciated will help you grow as well. Okay, so lastly, just to say that it's been great sharing this with you today. You can join us by subscribing to our updates, and we'll let you know how we're going to evolve our online centre. And if you are in a position to give a donation, please do that, because that really helps us develop all these classes and extend our work. We're here connecting with a community that normally comes along to the London Buddhist Centre, but we're connecting to people worldwide, and we really are part of many other organisations that are trying to support people through this crisis, and we're doing that in different ways as well. So please do, if you're in a position to give, monthly is great, but you know, any offering tonight is gratefully received. We're all in this situation together, and part of the Buddhist teaching is around generosity and community. So join our community, share this teaching. You can pass it on to a friend if you think it's going to be helpful, and you can also share by giving a donation. So thank you very much. I'll be here again next week, and look forward to seeing you then. And I'm going to end with a little verse. Well, it's a big verse actually, but short verse. And this verse is called Transference of Merit. And it's a very ancient verse. And what this does, in a way, it says that all the efforts you've been through, all the efforts you've made this week, you've accumulated positive sort of merits. You've accumulated positive mental states from doing so. And we want to give that to the world. We want to benefit the world through our own individual efforts. So I'll just recite it, and you can listen along and imagine that all our efforts collectively are going out to benefit many, many beings, okay? Beings that are suffering, beings that need help right at this point in time. We're going to be benefiting them through our efforts and through reciting this verse. So I'll recite it and then we'll end. Transference of merit and self-surrender. May the merit gained in my acting thus go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings. My personality throughout my existences, my possessions and my merit in all three ways, I give up without regard to myself for the benefit of all beings. Just as the earth and other elements are serviceable in many ways to the infinite number of beings inhabiting limitless space, so may I become that which maintains all beings situated throughout space, so long as all have not attained to peace. So wishing all beings well, wishing you well, and I'll see you again. Thank you.